Okay, welcome everybody to today's Wednesday workshop. We're here with Bhushan Karnik and may have a special guest later on who will be introduced at that time. Bhushan is one of the recipients of the first LTAP sponsorship to attend a national conference. So he was selected out of a number of applicants to go to this year's TRB in DC, and then challenged to come back and present with some of the findings, what the trends were, and his overall experience as an LTAP ambassador. So without further ado, I will go on mute and pass it over to you, Bhushan. Thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you, Heather. So I'm going to just start sharing my screen here, and we're going to go into that.
Yep, we've got it.
Okay, cool. So yes, first of all, of course, I'd like to thank the Colorado LTAP and the city of Greeley, Colorado, for giving me the opportunity to attend this TRB 2023. Believe it or not, I've been in the industry for I don't know 20 odd years, but this was the first time I ever went to TRB. For whatever reason, the calendars never matched. But it was fun. It was an awesome experience. So I'm just going to quickly go through the sessions that I attended. As anybody who has been to TRB knows, it's a huge, vast conference. There is everything happening in parallel. So I just kind of picked a few that that I was interested in based on what I put in my application, mainly looking at safety, urban design, urban roadway design, and then grants and funding availability, because that's kind of where where we are more interested in seeing what's happening. So with that being said, so the one of the sessions I attended was the urban roadway design, time for a new paradigm. So this was kind of an interesting session. Essentially, what they are trying to say was that the design, all our design has been based on the Green Book, which typically has been, using the vehicle as the main feature, and basically using the vehicle physics as part of our design. What they are trying to say was, for urban roadway design, we just need to kind of shift our thinking completely and look more at humans, like how much is what is the stress a human body can handle when hit by a moving vehicle. And that was kind of the so that's kind of where they are saying is like the urban roadway design needs to be a completely separate approach, more in line with the safe system approach that the FHWA is now now encouraging. And then and basically talking about not looking at a street just as a street, but what else can the street be in terms of including different modes of transport, whether it be pedestrians, whether it be bikes or bicyclists or cars, and then obviously now we have the automated or completely automatic vehicles in the mix too. So then they are like that's kind of the discussion. The Green Book, they're looking at the Green Book again, and that Green Book is supposed to have a section on urban design, but that's not due in 4 years. So they are advocating that irrespective of the Green Book, people should start looking at what can they do to integrate all this different information that's available out there into urban road design. So that was the next one was the bipartisan infrastructure law update. Obviously so the highlight of that was the US DOT is hiring people desperately, which is interesting to see. The focus of the administration, obviously, there's a lot of money that has been released, so they want to make sure the funding is passed on as soon as possible to the actual people, to the actual local agencies and state DOTs, so that they can actually see the money being used. And so that was the main focus. So the other issue, obviously, is all of these issues, especially of federal grants or federal dollars, is permitting, and permitting can take a long time. So they have about $100 million in the Infrastructure Direction Act to create local permitting liaisons. That's going to help reduce the permitting. Hopefully, that will help to reduce permitting timelines. There was a discussion on TIFIA and grants. TIFIA is basically it's a transportation infrastructure financing, I think, act or something. But basically, TIFIA is more like a loan system. TIFIA can fund up to 49% of your project, and it's a very it's not a competitive process. It's just you apply and they look at your project, they look at your, you know, as your agency, they look at your creditworthiness, and then they make the offer to you. Current rate is, I think, 3.77%. But if you're a rural community, that rate is half of that. So then you would pay less than 2%. And the loans are available for up to 35 years, could be extended up to 75 years, depending upon the type of project that's being funded. Um, so, so what they're saying, the kind of direction that was given was basically that they're encouraging agencies to go after TIFIA first. If you want to do a project, go to TIFIA first, because as a part of the TIFIA, they look at all the, you know, project worthiness, the project risks, and everything gets looked at there. And because that's already looked at, then when you submit for the grant, and in the TIFIA actually are federal dollars, but they can be used as a match towards the grant, which is kind of an interesting situation. So when you go to the grant, then they already, if the TIFIA has already been approved or the TIFIA is in process, then that puts your grant at a very different level in terms of, you know, how they look at it. So that's kind of their they're kind of looking at that. So that was the main thing, is start with TIFIA. The other thing was they want to make sure that, you know, whenever you submit a project, whether it be for TIFIA or whether for a grant, make sure that the projects are shovel ready. They do not want projects where, you know, we don't have a NEPA done or something like that. So they are like encouraging people to do all that stuff before you apply, which, you know, I thought was easier said than done, because that's a lot of investment for a local agency to make in something that they are not sure whether they're going to get the funding or not. But anyways, that was the direction they were giving. The new what they want to do is, now they want to the notice of funding opportunity. They want to basically go to a 30-day cycle. So they will give a month after the notice is published for us to submit, and then within 60 to 90 days they will make a decision. That's the direction they want to go. For if there's a rail project, they want to partner with private rail companies. So if you can show partnership, they can show the UPR or even the short line rails. If they are willing to be a partner, then that's going to put your project at a different, you know, level in terms of their recommendation and the review process. And then and obviously the entire focus is right on safety, equity, you know, the greenhouse reduction and sustainability. That's kind of the basis of everything they're doing right now. So so that kind of, it was an interesting session to hear that, and especially the fact that they are kind of encouraging people to go after TIFIA before going for the grant. So that's kind of a takeaway from that particular session. I also attended the State of ITS 2023. The focus more was on you know, what's happening, what's coming up new. So you know, like we talked about just now, automatic vehicles or automated vehicles. That's the next thing that's going to happen. But we do not have a national guidance on, you know, on how to implement, or, you know, or make sure that, you know, they have a standards for that. And we need federal level leadership for that. The AAM is the automated air mobility. This is kind of the VTOL kind of option, you know, where you just have the planes to take you around. So it's still in infancy, but again, the issue is the community engagement. Like, are people really going to be comfortable sitting in a tube that has no pilot in it and going remotely from point A to point B? So community engagement needs to start now. And then we need to start looking at how do we integrate this in any of the new transportation systems that we are developing, you know, whether it be interstates or interchanges or whatever. Like, are there locations, or is there a way to integrate this system? especially in areas of congestion, known congestion, that could be a very good resource. So if you need to know more information, the US DOT has a smart community resource center that has information about the grants, the different funding streams, and the technical resources that are available. They also had a vehicle to V2X technology update. The US DOT is right now working with the FCC and NTIA to resolve issues to prompt deployment of C-V2X technology, and they want to basically work with the ITE to achieve interoperable guidelines for V2X. But essentially, the takeaway from this meeting was we should start looking at infrastructure more as a data or technology, where basically it's more like a continuously updating system as technology changes. So they're like, think big, what's the possibilities out there, then start small and move fast, and then consider. One of the options they talked about was, for example, was looking at considering variable speed limits for speed harmonization and end of queue warnings. So this is kind of where rather than you coming to a sudden stop, if you know that there is traffic backed up, you start basically changing the speed limits way back so cars can start slowing down. So then it gives time for the traffic to start flowing again. So just stuff like that. It was interesting discussion. But again, to do all of those things means you need to have technology, you need to have fiber in place, you need to have all the sensors and stuff in place. So that's kind of where it seems like the ITS is going right now. The other session I attended was the contractor perspective on alternate construction methods. This is primarily design build or CMGC or methods like that. And this was from the contractor's perspective. They had contractors on the panel who were talking about their experiences on multiple projects across the nation. So obviously, one of the main things is the federal agencies, because the federal system is so much based on a design bid build type of systems. The federal agencies themselves need to get more comfortable with alternate design and construction methods. And obviously at state level, there is always the pull and push between, traditional DBB versus, alternative methods. So those are the challenges that they are facing. The most important thing from the entire discussion that I took away was risk allocation and understanding clarity on who owns the risk. Because they have, the contractor's perspective was they have seen projects where the owner assumed that the risk was on the contractor. The contractor was not in that position. And that's when the project starts going bad. So that has to be very clearly explained or established right from day one of like who's taking care of the risk, what's the risks are. And so that way everybody's aware of who's responsible for what aspect of the process. So to do that, obviously, there's training that needs to happen to make sure the contracting authorities are aware of differences between what's traditional and what's an alternate project delivery. The other thing that they talked about was NEPA, because they have one of the biggest challenges that they have seen from the contractor's perspective is that agencies get them on board because they're a design build, and then they have to still do the NEPA. So or stuff like that. So they're like, it's good if you get us earlier involved in this NEPA process, so then they can be a part of the NEPA process, so they understand the risks associated, so that they don't end up proposing something that's going to be against the NEPA record or decision. The other thing they talked about was the progressive design build. This is kind of it's used in Europe quite a bit, but it's kind of catching up in the US now. It's essentially what it does. What it is in a nutshell is, instead of asking for cost as a part of a design build procurement, you basically only go with qualifications. So you select a team purely based on their qualifications, and then once that is done, then they start getting into the design, and then they start looking at the cost and stuff. So obviously there's pros and cons. one is basically um, one of the examples they were giving was what's the impact of the traveling public? Like, what is the what's the intensity of the project, right? So it's like how much work can be done in a month versus impact of traveling public. So that's kind of the discussion that needs to happen, because the contractor obviously would like to shut everything down and get it done. But is that really a realistic approach depending upon the project? Then you need to have traffic open, so stuff like that. And then obviously, since you're basically making a selection based on only qualifications and not cost, then the trust between the teams is very vital. That you need to have the trust that the team that you have selected is going to not just rip you off, but work in good faith with you. So that's uh, another factor to be considered. And the one of the factors that is like obviously is because these projects are always in the public eye. So as because they're generally major projects. So then the question is like we need to be able to make sure that we can show, as an agency, we need to be able to make sure that we can show the public that this process is actually um, a better value for the taxpayer, you know, than the traditional methods of design bid build, or even the traditional design build methods. Um, so that's kind of the discussion that happened on the ADCs. Then I attended a session managing through a changing and evolving work environment. This was primarily based on this is more like an HR session discussion. It was primarily based on what happened during the COVID, during the pandemic, how different agencies handled, the pandemic. And, because there were, believe it or not, there were some or many DOTs who actually did not even have, they were still using workstations. They did not even have laptops. So how, so they had to like really get going pretty fast. And, so they, so one of the things that was the leaders set the tone, is like, as in, if you as a leader project calm and and have a plan and action and willing to listen to the feedback, then everybody else kind of falls in line, and it becomes a team effort. This Texas DOT developed two separate pandemic playbooks. One was for the field staff. How are they going to deal with pandemic? Because they still need to be out there maintaining the infrastructure and the facilities. And then the office staff, what do they need? So that was Texas DOT's approach was to come. So one of the main things was, so they have developed standard operating procedures for how things will be done. Cybersecurity was obviously a big issue because now nobody's on the network anymore, right? People are on their own, Wi-Fi's and stuff, and um, so and one of the things that they really started to look at was, do we really need to still spend time signing paper documents, or can DocuSign just be an approach? And that's where they have gone now, where Texas DOT is just using DocuSign now for most of the stuff that they do. So that was a discussion. The other discussion was what happens for lower level staff, staff who really cannot do not have the option to telework, but they're still basically putting themselves in the line of in a pandemic situation, they're putting themselves on the front line. So maybe there has to be a discussion with the leadership or with legislation in case of a DOT to kind of look at equity pay for those peoples, because they are really doing beyond what everybody else is safe in their houses and they're out there working kind of a deal, and they are the lower level people anyway. So that was something that we should be looking at. Then the discussion was also we need to start looking at retention policies, and one of the things is to basically start empowering the employees themselves to come up with ideas that so then that has buy-in, and then that helps them with, makes them feel valued. So that's kind of the approach. They were talking about some interesting data. They're saying 17 million, that's 17 million employees are forecasted to leave the infrastructure and the transportation sector in the next 10 years. So this is going to happen while we are looking at about a 30 to 40% bump in funding with the BIL and with the Inflation Reduction Act, which basically means that there's going to be a lot of employment pressure. So we need to start looking now, start strategizing now in terms of looking at different hiring models, looking at encouraging, more women, more, minorities, immigrants, making more internships and co-ops available for college students or high school students for that matter, to kind of get them, um, more interested in the transportation sector. And Susan's doing a great job. I think she's kind of doing the lead in that. So so that was a discussion that happened on this topic. And then I think this was the last topic. Yeah. So this is there was a session on low carbon asphalt. Again, this was primarily, again, this goes back to the greenhouse gas. So as we all know, asphalt, concrete, flat glass, steel, just the manufacturing process, and and even the process to get it in and place it is basically generates a lot of GHGs by themselves. So the the FHW is looking at ways to develop these materials such that they have a lower carbon footprint than what they have right now. So there's $7 billion available for state DOTs to implement and develop and implement carbon reduction strategies. There is a life cycle cost assessment tool available on the US DOT website. So what that tool, because all of these materials have an initial high cost, but what they're saying is you should put that in the tool and then show over the life of the project, how you're actually going to have a better impact. And especially if you're going to go after grant funding, to show something like that would basically make your projects more, um, more likely to be considered for grant funding. So that's kind of what they're talking about. They also have a $2 billion grant for low carbon transportation materials. Colorado DOT actually is one of the recipients of that grant that they're looking at. Really didn't go into much detail about what Colorado DOT was doing. And it will be one of the topics that maybe we have C.dot come and talk to us about what they're planning to do with that. And then there is a guide that they have put out. It's called Towards Sustainable Payment Systems, a reference document, and they encourage that people look at that guide and kind of use that guide to kind of figure out how to incorporate all this low carbon materials in their transportation projects. So that was kind of it. Is there any questions? My email is right there on there, bushan.koenig@greengo.com. And, you're free to kind of contact me and I'll be more than happy to share more information. So yeah, thank you.
Great. Hey, Bhushan, thanks so much for joining. I mean, it's just such a wealth of information with just a sponsorship, to be able to bring back to the Colorado community. And it's so applicable. We saw Colorado is already a recipient of those grants and already underway. I know we've done a lot with the EPDs, the environmental declaration plans, EDPs.
Yep, EDPs, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah. And so we're kind of on the forefront of that, and to see how that's coupling then with, sustainability and that sort, at least at the DOT level, is a great way to start engaging the local agencies. So I think it's really interesting. If we get any questions or comments, I'll certainly let you know. And for those of you watching, Bhushan is now part of the Colorado LTAP advisory board. So thanks for joining that. It's been mutually beneficial. And any words of advice for those who may be considering an LTAP national conference sponsorship in the future?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about people applying like me, or
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, I think the application process was really interesting. And I mean, those questions were really thought provoking. I had to kind of sit and think about it a little bit, but I mean, I was not privy to obviously what happened behind the scenes there, but but I think that was a good process. At least you have an idea of what people are looking at, because like I mentioned, the TRB is a huge conference, obviously, and this is just like a sliver of what was happening out there. I'm sure I missed a lot of more interesting stuff too, but there's so much you can do. But but yeah, I mean, um, I think it depends upon the interest of the person. And I think if we're going to go down this line more, maybe we look at, sending, I don't know, depending on how many people you want to select, but have somebody, have like two or three candidates with, different backgrounds. So then we get a good cross-section flavor of, what's happening on the design side, what's happening on the construction side, what's happening on the traffic safety and the funding side. So,
yep,
and of course, operations and maintenance is a big deal too. So
yeah,
like Link would attest to that. So
yep,
so there is I think those are the main four streams in how I would look at it. And then that way I think we would get a very good overall review of what happened in the conference, or like what people
yeah,
experienced. So
yeah,
yeah,
great.
but it was a good process. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity once
Yeah,
again.
we're
Yep.
glad that you were able to go, and thanks for bringing back the information.
Yep.
And with that, we'll leave with Bhushan's teaser for the follow-up Wednesday workshop, which will include Clint, who also joined Bhushan from the city of Colorado Springs at the TRB, and his takeaways. So stay tuned for the next Wednesday workshop. And Bhushan, thanks so much for being here.
Yep. Thank you so much. Take care.
Yep.